First, let me tell you something important. You cannot control others, but you can always control how you react. So today, I'm sharing 5 ways to handle difficult people in a way that keeps your peace and your power intact. Let's dive in. Staying calm and not reacting emotionally is one of the most powerful tools you can have when dealing with difficult people. It may sound simple, but in reality, it takes a lot of awareness, patience, and self-control to truly master. The moment someone says something hurtful, unfair, or deliberately provocative, our natural instinct is to react. Sometimes angrily, sometimes defensively, sometimes even silently harboring resentment. But here's the thing. Reacting emotionally gives away your power. It allows the other person to control the situation, and more importantly, it allows them to control your emotions. And as someone who wants to live a peaceful, empowered life, that is not acceptable. When you remain calm, you essentially tell the other person that their words or actions cannot touch your inner stability. You're telling them without even saying a word that you are in charge of yourself, that you are grounded, and that negativity cannot. Hi, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about something almost all of us deal with: difficult people. You know, those people who drain your energy, test your patience, and somehow always find a way to make life complicated, pull you into chaos. Learning to stay calm starts with understanding your triggers. Everyone has certain words, actions, or behaviors that immediately spark an emotional reaction. The first step is to recognize these triggers in yourself. For example, maybe you have a coworker who constantly interrupts you, or a family member who criticizes your choices in a way that feels unfair. The moment you notice that your chest tightens, your voice starts to rise, or your heart beats faster, that's your signal. That's the moment where staying calm matters the most. Instead of immediately reacting, take a deep breath. Give yourself a second or even a few seconds to pause before you respond. This pause might feel uncomfortable at first because our instincts are wired to defend ourselves instantly, but with practice, it becomes a habit that changes the entire dynamic of your interactions. Another important aspect is to remind yourself that reacting emotionally rarely solves the problem. When you respond with anger or frustration, the other person often becomes defensive too, and suddenly the situation escalates into an argument or conflict that nobody wanted. On the other hand, when you stay calm, you create a space where rational conversation can happen, or at the very least, you maintain your own peace while the other person vents. It's like having a shield around your emotional self. The difficult person might still be negative or harsh, but it won't penetrate your calmness. Staying calm is not about suppressing your emotions or pretending everything is okay. It's about acknowledging your feelings internally while choosing not to act on impulses that will create chaos. Practicing mindfulness can be incredibly helpful here. Mindfulness is simply being aware of your thoughts and feelings in the present moment without judgment. When someone provokes you, notice the physical sensations, your heart rate, the tension in your shoulders, the tightness in your stomach. Recognize that these reactions are normal, but they do not have to dictate your behavior. Once you are aware, you can consciously choose how to respond. Sometimes just saying nothing and listening calmly can be the most powerful response of all. Other times, calmly stating your perspective without aggression can shift the conversation entirely. The key is that your calmness communicates strength and self-control. It's also helpful to remember that difficult people often act out because of their own issues, insecurities, or stress. Their behavior is not really about you, even though it feels personal. When you internalize this, it becomes easier to stay calm. You can observe their behavior without taking it as an attack, and your emotional response shifts from frustration to understanding, or at least neutral observation. This mental shift doesn't mean you condone their behavior. It simply allows you to maintain control over your own emotions. Breathing techniques can also play a critical role. When we are triggered, our breathing often becomes shallow and fast, which increases tension and anxiety. By taking slow, deep breaths, you send a signal to your body that you are safe and in control. This physiological change helps you respond with calmness rather than impulsive emotion. Some people Even silently repeat affirmations during these moments, like I am calm, I am in control, I choose peace, which reinforces your mental and emotional stability. Another subtle but powerful strategy is to shift your focus from the person to the outcome you want. Instead of thinking, I have to show them they're wrong, think, I want to handle this without losing my peace. When your focus is on your own composure rather than the other person's behavior, your emotional reactions naturally diminish. You're no longer feeding the fire. They are not dictating the energy of the room. You are. Staying calm also sets an example. When you handle difficult people with composure, you inspire respect, even if they don't admit it. People notice strength, patience, and grace, even in challenging situations. Your calmness can influence the other person subtly, encouraging them to lower their aggression or rethink their behavior. At the very least, it protects you from unnecessary stress, resentment, and regret later. Many times, people react emotionally in the heat of the moment and later feel ashamed of what they said or did. By staying calm, you avoid creating those moments of regret for yourself. Ultimately, staying calm and not reacting emotionally is about taking responsibility for your own energy. You cannot control how others behave, but you can control how you respond. You can choose to let negativity affect you, or you can choose to rise above it. It's a daily practice, a conscious effort to maintain your peace and integrity no matter what happens around you. Every time you successfully stay calm in the face of provocation, you are reinforcing a habit of emotional resilience. Over time, this becomes second nature, and difficult people lose their power over your mind and heart. You start to approach every challenging interaction with confidence, grace, and an unshakable inner calm, which is truly the most powerful way to handle any difficult person in your life. Setting clear boundaries is one of the most important skills you can develop when dealing with difficult people, but it's also one of the most underrated. Many of us grow up thinking that being kind, polite, and accommodating means never saying no, never standing up for ourselves, and always putting others' needs before our own. But here's the thing. Boundaries are not about being rude, selfish, or cold. They are about self-respect, emotional health, and clarity in relationships. Without boundaries, difficult people will take advantage of your generosity, your patience, and even your love, leaving you drained, frustrated, and sometimes even resentful. When you set clear boundaries, you are communicating in a respectful but firm way what you will accept and what you will not. You are drawing lines that protect your peace, your energy, and your happiness. And that is an essential part of handling difficult people effectively. The first step in setting boundaries is understanding yourself and your limits. What are the things that make you uncomfortable, stressed, or upset? Is it when someone interrupts you constantly, criticizes you unfairly, or tries to control your decisions? Perhaps it's people who are negative, constantly complain, or make you feel small. Whatever the triggers are, being aware of them is the foundation of creating boundaries. You need to know what you will tolerate and what you will not. Clarity in your own mind makes it much easier to communicate those boundaries to others because you are confident about what you are asking for and why. Once you understand your limits, the next step is communication. Setting boundaries doesn't mean expecting people to read your mind. It means speaking up clearly and respectfully. For instance, if a coworker constantly interrupts you, you might say, I appreciate your input, but I need to finish my point before we continue. If a family member is being critical or negative, you could say, I value your advice, but I need to make my own decisions and would appreciate support rather than criticism. The key is using I statements instead of you statements because this makes it about your needs and feelings, not an attack on them. Clear, calm, and assertive communication is the heart of boundaries. When you express yourself confidently, even difficult people understand that you are serious about your limits. Another important part of boundaries is consistency. It's not enough to set a boundary once and then let it be crossed repeatedly. If you tell someone you cannot tolerate certain behavior and then continue to accept it, the message becomes confusing. Difficult people will test limits. It's in their nature. They may try to push, manipulate, or guilt you into bending your rules. That's why being consistent is crucial. Each time someone crosses your boundary, you respond in the same calm, firm way that reinforces your limits. This consistency builds respect because people quickly realize that you are serious and unwavering about your self-respect. Over time, even the most difficult individuals learn that crossing your boundaries is not an option. Boundaries are also about protecting your energy. Life is full of responsibilities, challenges, and people who demand our attention. If you allow difficult people to constantly drain you, you have less energy for your own goals, dreams, and happiness. Boundaries are a way of preserving your energy so you can invest it where it truly matters. This doesn't mean avoiding conflict or being distant from people. It means being strategic about how you engage. For example, if a friend constantly complains or criticizes, you might limit conversations to topics that are constructive or uplifting. Or if a coworker tries to delegate their responsibilities unfairly to you, you might politely but firmly say, "I cannot take this on right now, but perhaps we can find another solution." By creating boundaries, you are essentially saying, "I value my energy, my time, and my peace, and I will not allow anyone to misuse them." It's also important to understand that setting boundaries may initially feel uncomfortable, especially if you are not used to asserting yourself. You might worry about hurting someone's feelings or being perceived as selfish, but here's the truth. People who respect you will understand and even appreciate your clarity. Those who react negatively are usually the ones who need to learn that you are not available for manipulation, criticism, or disrespect. Setting boundaries is not about controlling others. It's about controlling what you will accept in your life. It is an act of self-love, self-respect, and personal empowerment. Boundaries can be physical, emotional, or even digital. Physical boundaries might include personal space or time alone. Emotional boundaries might involve protecting yourself from negative comments, gossip, or emotional manipulation. Digital boundaries could involve limiting social media interactions, muting messages, or setting specific times for work emails. In today's world, where people are constantly connected and overwhelmed by information, boundaries are more important than ever. They create a safe space for you to thrive and prevent unnecessary stress caused by difficult people. Finally, setting boundaries is also a lesson in self-trust. The more you honor your own limits, the more you develop confidence in your own judgment. You learn to trust that you deserve respect, that your needs are valid, and that you are not responsible for fixing everyone else's behavior. This trust in yourself strengthens your ability to handle difficult people without being reactive or emotional, because your boundaries act as a natural buffer. Difficult people may continue to test you, but when you are grounded in your boundaries, you can navigate these interactions with confidence, grace, and clarity. One of the biggest lessons anyone can learn in life, especially when dealing with difficult people, is to not take things personally. It sounds simple when you hear it, but in reality, it is one of the hardest things to practice consistently. Every time someone says something rude, critical, or hurtful, our natural tendency is to feel attacked. We internalize their words, let them linger in our minds, and sometimes even let them affect our self-esteem and confidence. But here's the truth. Most of the time, when people act negatively, it is about them, not you. Their behavior reflects their own insecurities, struggles, fears, or limitations, and has very little to do with your worth as a person. Understanding this is the first step toward freeing yourself from unnecessary stress and emotional pain. Difficult people often try to project their own issues onto others. They might criticize, judge, or belittle someone else to feel more in control or to boost their own self-image. When you take these words personally, you are allowing them to influence your emotions and your energy. But if you can step back and recognize that their behavior is a reflection of their internal state, it becomes much easier to maintain your composure and your confidence. For instance, a colleague might constantly point out your mistakes or micromanage you. If you see it as a personal attack, you might feel angry, frustrated, or anxious, but if you understand that they are likely struggling with their own pressures or insecurities, You can respond calmly without letting their negativity penetrate your peace. It's important to remember that taking things personally often magnifies situations unnecessarily. When we interpret someone else's behavior as a reflection of our worth, we start analyzing every word, gesture, or expression, trying to figure out what we did wrong or how we could have handled things differently. This mental overloading not only wastes energy, but also creates a sense of self-doubt that is completely unnecessary. By learning to separate yourself from their behavior, you can stop overthinking and preserve your mental and emotional health. You start realizing that their words are just that, words, and they only have the power you give them. Another key aspect is recognizing the patterns in difficult people. Many times these individuals behave the same way toward multiple people, not just you. If you pay attention, you'll notice that their criticism, impatience, or negativity is a constant, which further proves that it is not about you personally. This awareness helps you detach emotionally and respond strategically rather than react impulsively. For example, if a boss constantly criticizes everyone in the team, understanding this pattern allows you to see their behavior objectively without taking offense or letting it impact your confidence. Detachment in this sense is not coldness, it is clarity and wisdom. Practicing self-awareness is crucial in not taking things personally. When someone's words or actions start to affect you, pause and ask yourself, why does this bother me? Is this really about me or is it about them? Often you'll discover that your emotional reaction is more about your own sensitivity or expectations than the other person's behavior. This insight allows you to regulate your emotions and choose a response that aligns with your values and peace of mind. The more you practice this, the more natural it becomes to handle criticism, judgment, or negativity with grace. It's also helpful to cultivate self-worth independent of other people's opinions. When you are secure in who you are and confident in your abilities, the words or actions of difficult people carry much less weight. You start to see criticism as feedback rather than a verdict on your value. Even when someone tries to belittle you, it doesn't define your identity. This mindset shifts the focus from seeking external validation to trusting your own judgment and inner strength. People who are difficult often thrive on attention and emotional reactions. By not taking their behavior personally, you essentially remove the fuel from their fire, and they lose the power to affect your emotional state. Practicing emotional detachment does not mean being indifferent or unkind. It simply means protecting your emotional well-being by not letting negativity become your reality. You can acknowledge someone's behavior without absorbing it. For instance, if a friend criticizes your choices harshly, you can respond calmly or simply choose not to respond at all. By keeping your emotional boundaries intact, you remain in control of your reactions, and this control becomes your strength. Lastly, remind yourself that your life is too valuable to be consumed by other people's negativity. Every time you take something personally, you give away your power and your peace. When you consciously decide not to internalize their words, you reclaim that power. You focus on your own growth, happiness, and priorities, and difficult people no longer have the authority to dictate your emotional state. You start creating a life where your confidence is rooted in self-awareness, resilience, and inner strength, and not in the fluctuating opinions or moods of others. Listening but staying detached is one of the most subtle yet powerful ways to handle difficult people. At first glance, it may seem contradictory. How can you truly listen without becoming emotionally involved? But that is exactly what makes it so effective. Most people confuse listening with agreeing or absorbing someone's negativity. They allow the words, the tone, and even the energy of another person to affect their own emotional state. Difficult people often thrive on this reaction because it validates their behavior. They want to pull you into drama, conflict, or emotional tension. But when you listen attentively, another strategy is reframing your perspective. Instead of thinking they are attacking me, try thinking they are revealing their own challenges. When you reframe interactions in this way, you neutralize the emotional impact and create a mental space where you can respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. This practice also fosters empathy as you begin to see difficult people not as enemies, but as individuals struggling in their own ways. Empathy doesn't mean tolerating abuse, but it allows you to respond without bitterness, resentment, or unnecessary stress. How maintaining emotional detachment, you take control of the interaction. You acknowledge what is being said, but you do not allow it to penetrate your peace or dictate your feelings. This is a skill that requires awareness, practice, and a strong sense of self. The first step in listening without attachment is to focus on understanding rather than reacting. When someone is difficult, their words might be sharp, critical, or even disrespectful. Instead of immediately defending yourself or countering their points, pause and try to truly understand where they are coming from. Ask yourself, what are they really saying and why are they saying it? Often, difficult people are not being logical or fair. They are expressing their frustrations, insecurities, or personal struggles. By approaching the conversation with curiosity rather than judgment, you shift the focus from your emotional reaction to comprehension. This shift allows you to remain calm, composed, and emotionally uninvolved, even when their words are harsh. Detachment does not mean ignoring the person or being cold. It means creating a mental buffer between their behavior and your emotions. Imagine a protective bubble around yourself. Inside, you maintain your calm and clarity. Outside, the negativity bounces off without affecting you. This mental visualization can be incredibly helpful when dealing with people who are habitually critical or confrontational. You can hear their words, acknowledge them internally, and respond thoughtfully, all while preserving your own energy. By practicing this form of mental detachment, you prevent yourself from being drawn into unnecessary arguments, emotional spirals, or stress. Another important aspect of listening while staying detached is active observation. Pay attention not just to the words being said, but also to the underlying emotions, tone, and patterns in their behavior. Difficult people often repeat certain behaviors because it works for them. They get reactions from others that validate their perspective or control the situation. By observing without reacting, you gain valuable insight into their patterns and motivations. This awareness allows you to respond strategically rather than emotionally, turning a potentially draining interaction into an opportunity for understanding and growth. It's also essential to control your own internal dialogue during these interactions. When someone says something hurtful or negative, your mind may immediately start generating responses like anger, defensiveness, or self-doubt. Detachment involves recognizing these thoughts and gently choosing not to act on them impulsively. You can acknowledge that you have an emotional reaction, but you do not have to let it guide your behavior. By doing this, you maintain control over your responses and ensure that your interactions remain composed, dignified, and productive. One technique to reinforce detachment is to focus on the message rather than the delivery. Difficult people often use harsh words, blame, or sarcasm to communicate. If you allow your focus to stay on the delivery, you risk getting emotionally triggered. Instead, try to extract the underlying point or concern, ignoring the negativity in tone or expression. For example, if a coworker complains angrily about a project, rather than reacting to their anger, listen for the specific issue they are raising. This approach not only keeps you detached, but also allows you to address the real concern effectively without escalating the situation. Detachment also involves maintaining perspective. Remember that the other person's behavior is about their own state of mind, not your worth. Difficult people often act out due to stress, insecurity, or past experiences. When you internalize this understanding, it becomes easier to listen without taking their behavior personally. You can acknowledge their frustration, empathize with their perspective if appropriate, and yet remain emotionally neutral. This balance between empathy and detachment is key. It allows you to respond with compassion when necessary, but without losing yourself in the process. Practicing mindfulness is another powerful tool for staying detached while listening. By being fully present in the moment, you can observe the conversation objectively. Notice the words, emotions, and body language without judgment or attachment. Mindfulness helps you separate the person's behavior from your own emotional state, enabling you to maintain calm and clarity even intense or challenging interactions. Over time, this practice becomes second nature, and you find that difficult people have less power over your peace because you no longer automatically absorb their negativity. Finally, staying detached while listening is about choice. You choose how much emotional energy to invest, how much attention to give, and how much influence their behavior has over your life. This choice is liberating because it empowers you to remain in control, no matter how chaotic or challenging the interaction might be. By listening attentively but maintaining detachment, you demonstrate emotional intelligence, strength, and grace, all while protecting your own peace and energy. Walking away when necessary is one of the most underrated yet powerful tools you can use to handle difficult people. Many of us grow up thinking that staying and confronting every problem, every argument, or every negative interaction is a sign of strength. We believe that to be strong, we must endure, explain, justify, or fight back. But real strength is knowing when a situation is beyond repair, or when a person's behavior is consistently harmful, and recognizing that walking away is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of self-respect, wisdom, and emotional intelligence. Difficult people often thrive on conflict. They gain satisfaction from seeing others react, become frustrated, or lose their composure. By choosing to walk away, you take control, protect your energy, and maintain your peace. Walking away is not about running from challenges. It is about choosing what battles are worth your time, attention, and emotional energy. The first step in knowing when to walk away is awareness. You need to recognize patterns in a person's behavior and understand the impact it has on you. Difficult people often repeat the same negative actions, criticizing, blaming, manipulating, or undermining you. If you notice that interactions consistently leave you feeling drained, anxious, or upset, that is a strong signal that walking away may be necessary. Awareness also involves understanding your own limits. You cannot change or control someone else, but you can control your own boundaries. When a person crosses your limits repeatedly, you must remind yourself that your energy and peace are more important than proving a point or gaining their approval. Walking away is a choice to prioritize yourself. Walking away also requires courage. It is not easy to step away from someone you care about, a colleague you work with, or a family member, especially when there is pressure to maintain the relationship. But courage is not the absence of fear. It is taking action despite fear. It is about acknowledging that staying in a toxic or draining environment harms you more than it helps anyone else. Every time you choose to walk away, you reinforce your self-worth. You demonstrate that your peace, your happiness, and your emotional well-being are non-negotiable. Difficult people may react angrily or try to guilt you into staying, but remember that their reaction is a reflection of their discomfort with your boundaries, not your wrongdoing. Another key element of walking away is clarity of intention. You are not walking away out of anger or revenge. You are walking away to protect yourself. This mindset prevents the action from being reactive or impulsive. It becomes a conscious decision rather than an emotional escape. You may choose to walk away temporarily from a heated conversation, or you may choose to distance yourself permanently from someone who is consistently toxic. Either way, having clarity about why you are walking away ensures that your actions are rooted in wisdom and self-respect, not in frustration or retaliation. Walking away is also about reclaiming your power. Difficult people often try to control situations and manipulate reactions. When you allow yourself to be drawn into their negativity, you give them that power. By choosing to walk away, you break the cycle of control. You no longer feed into the drama or the conflict, and in doing so, you assert your independence. This act of walking away sends a silent but powerful message. You are in charge of your life, your emotions, and your interactions. You refuse to allow anyone else to dictate your mood or your sense of self-worth. It's important to remember that walking away does not always mean cutting someone off completely. Sometimes it is a temporary measure, a pause to gain perspective, calm down, or evaluate the situation. Taking space allows you to think clearly, assess your options, and respond rationally rather than react emotionally. In other cases, walking away may be permanent, especially when a person repeatedly violates your boundaries or shows no willingness to change. In these instances, walking away is a necessary act of self-preservation. You are choosing to prioritize relationships that are mutually respectful, supportive, and uplifting, rather than investing energy in people who consistently bring negativity into your life. Walking away also teaches others how to treat you. Difficult people often push limits because they are used to testing boundaries. When you walk away, you are creating a precedent. You are demonstrating that disrespect, manipulation, or negativity will not be tolerated. Over time, people learn that if they want to engage with you, it must be on terms that are respectful and fair. Walking away is not just about protecting yourself. It is about setting a standard for how you expect to be treated. Finally, walking away is a form of self-love. It is a reminder that you are worthy of peace, respect, and positivity. Life is too short to spend time and energy on people who drain you, belittle you, or create unnecessary stress. When you walk away, you are investing in yourself, your happiness, and your personal growth. You are saying yes to your own well-being and no to situations or people that compromise it. The act of walking away becomes an empowering habit, one that allows you to navigate life with confidence, dignity, and emotional strength. At the end of the day, walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You're not giving up. You're choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and self-respect over unnecessary drama. Some people thrive on conflict because it feeds their emptiness. But you've evolved beyond that. You no longer chase explanations or closure. You create your own. The power lies not in proving your point, but in protecting your peace. Remember, silence speaks volumes, and distance delivers lessons that words never can. When you walk away with grace, you don't lose anything. You simply make room for better energy, better people, and a better you.